I'd like to welcome everyone aboard. This is Randy Santucci and Dan Davila today, May 15th, on opening day, our podcast of Opening Day Sportsman. The title of today's is going to be Censorship, what the PGC is not saying or doing, and how that's affecting the topic of not only the opener, but other issues. Let me invite Dan in here. Dan, welcome aboard.
Buddy, and to all the female hunters out there, happy Mother's Day, a day late. I hope you guys had a great weekend. Got some turkey hunting in, hopefully, on Saturday. Anyway, Randy, let's get it rolling.
It's been believe it or not, Dan and I have had a lot going on business-wise and other things over the last 2 or 3 months, so we're a little late on this particular podcast, but a lot's happened. We're going to try to cover briefly several issues today, starting off with the April meeting that unfolded. I think everyone knows from the last meeting that the testimony was dominating for the Monday opener. The place was filled. We had, I think it was 25 or 26 to 6 supporting the Monday opener. We went basically a similar thing. Not quite as many people there, but still a decent crowd. And it was, again, the testimony was majority for the Monday opener in that. And part of the reason we're titling this podcast of Censorship is something that's been a concern to me and a lot of sportsmen that are involved in the meeting process for quite some time, is the Pennsylvania Game Commission does not record and contain and continue and broadcast the public comment portion of their public meeting. It's censored out. In other words, the whole meeting content would be there. When public comment begins, that's not included if you want to watch their broadcast on YouTube. You would say, well, is that something that's normal? Well, the Pennsylvania Fish and Boat Commission does not do that. All of the public comments from people that make the effort to show up at the agency are broadcast on their recording on their YouTube recording for the Fish and Boat Commission. That's disturbing, and I don't think it's something that's appropriate. And I think this is going to get looked into further because the aspect of what we're fighting for here for this opener was very clearly, defined, was very unquestionably the majority that testified at those two meetings, and nobody sees it outside that venue. So that's a problem. Dan and I, like I said, have been busy the last few months, so we've been doing some peripheral things as we had time. One of them was we were going to run an ad in the Pennsylvania Outdoor News like it has been done previously over the past few years to keep readers in that particular publication aware of what's going on. And we ended up with an ad, which was probably, money-wise, $1,000, $1,200. I'm not exactly sure what the number was then. And the last part of the article contained the story about Commissioner Geiger's comments through her Facebook page. Some of the stuff we touched on in previous podcasts, which was her working for a paid position with another organization, the National Deer Association, coercing hunters over to that organization, trying to pull them away from this topic, that it was a done deal, offering a hunting bow as a prize, along with some sort of a Sika deer hunt in Maryland, things that we felt that were basically a conflict of interest with her board seat as a seated commissioner on the Game Commission. And one of the things also was said at the end of her little, what would you call it, a rant, that this issue was not important, was the fact she said this is dead for the 2022 or 23 season, or 23-24, the upcoming season. It was dead. And that was basically usurping the process. The meeting of April contains public comment, and then the final vote would have happened after that meeting. She had put out on her Facebook group or through on our Facebook page that it's a done deal, I think is the way she worded it. And how inappropriate is that? All of the people that come to that meeting that make the effort to make their voice heard, they weren't even going to be heard. That was going to be a non-issue. So as big of a controversy as this Monday-Saturday opener thing still is 4 years later, certainly not small potatoes that should be dismissed by the opinion or an attitude, if you will, of a commissioner, whether president or not. So that was the part that was troubling. And when we went to run this ad, the editor of the Outdoor News, Jeff Mulholland, would not run the ad and he trimmed out the Commissioner Geiger incident. Then he was going to run it. Well, felt that was inappropriate. Dan and I talked, and I ended up calling Jeff. We had a spirited conversation, and basically we opted out. So we pulled that ad. We weren't going to spend that money with the paper, because he felt that he was not going to allow reporting of facts that surrounded Commissioner Geiger. The censorship recently, and that's why we titled this "What the Things That Aren't Being Said." I testified at that April meeting, and some of you that are involved in our group would know the incident already surrounding Senator Dan Lachlan, who came to support the opener 2019. We felt that this was what had a big cause to do this, to help influence his 3-day Sunday hunting bill. Getting a Saturday opener would have squeezed the legislature into understanding, well, we have to have Sunday. We can't hunt Saturday and not Sunday. And then shortly after, this happened and it was implemented in 2019, it was brought to my attention from an individual, and I had a conversation. And let me just read my testimony, and then we'll see how this got censored also regarding Outdoor News, reporting it. I was in attendance at the 2019 meeting when Senator Game and Fisheries Chairman Dan Lachlan testified as an elected official. His testimony skirted truthfulness because his camp is in New York and he could hunt deer opener with his sons the week prior. His testimony seemed out of place at the time. In January of this year, that's would have been 2022, I spoke with a conservation officer from the Virginia Department of Wildlife Resources who cited Senator Dan Lachlan on January 11th, 2020, only a little over a month after the first Saturday opener. He and a companion were on a duck hunting trip in the state of Virginia. The officer involved could not recall his hunting partner's name, but did recall the other hunter was a, quote, a pretty high-up official from the Pennsylvania Game Commission. In appearance alone, this looks highly inappropriate. Was this a celebratory hunting trip for a combined effort to achieve the Saturday opener and Senate Bill 147 of the senators? So you had the senator at that time, who was chairman of Game and Fisheries, as really an oversight of the agency, out on a duck hunting trip in Virginia, and bad enough, cited for hunting without a license. Then, of course, who he was hunting with and the timing thereof is certainly something that's noteworthy. And this was reported. Of course, my testimony was newsworthy, and it was reported in the Outdoor News by the editor, Jeff Mulholland. He puts in his personal column, I think it's Off a Soiled Cuff is the title, and he read Senator Lachlan, after this happened, put out, it was damage control of this, that he made a mistake, and he tried to lay the fact that he did not have his appropriate licensing for the out-of-state license in Virginia, that he went to a Walmart, and the person there improperly informed him that all he needed was a federal duck stamp. Well, certainly a chairman of a Senate Game and Fisheries, a hunter that has a camp out of state to begin with, which Senator Lachlan's camp is located in New York, would be well aware of out-of-state requirements regarding hunting licenses. Any of us would. Any hunter that would get asked to hunt out of state with someone, I think one of the first questions would be, what do I need to do, or what kind of license would I have to have, or how much would it cost? So those are just natural. So it was reported, his damage control, if you will, the senator tried to play this down as just an honest mistake. Okay. If you want to accept that, fine. But what was left out again was the meat and potatoes of the fact that his hunting partner there was an upper official in the Pennsylvania Game Commission. So again, the entire story does not get told. So, the impressions that are left, the things that are being given to sportsmen are not accurately being laid out there. And we continue to...
Can I add something, Randy? Can I add something right there?
Absolutely. Sure.
Listen, not only we don't have a voice. They don't record anything, any emails, any phone calls into the Pennsylvania Game Commission are met with a boilerplate response. They've dug in. They're sticking with their survey that they feel is appropriate, which our coalition, you and I both, know that it's flawed at many junctures, many of those questions. And they controlled the questions of that survey. So we don't have a voice. How on earth would we ever move anything? It's been 2 years running now, Randy, where we've not gotten one single commissioner vote for us. And for them to walk away from 250, 300,000 people that we would estimate wouldn't vote for a Saturday opener. Now we have a huge division that everybody has egg on her face, not just the Pennsylvania Game Commission, but you and I have taken bullets. You in particular, because you've been dogging this from day one. It's a sad state of affairs where we're at. And for all those people that would like an update as to where we stand, once Randy's completed this, we'll give you an update on House Bill H-495 and the progress as we know it from Senator Boscola from the Senate version of a bill which she's going to introduce. So just wanted to get that out there.
Yeah, that's the aspect of this, let's call it inappropriate reporting in the media, censorship by the agency. This is part and parcel why this division currently exists. Perhaps, you're talking to a lot of people that are Saturday supporters that don't know the story. They don't hear the facts. They don't hear the entire story of the economic side of this, the so forth and so on. And as this thing moves forward, like I think yesterday I weighed in on one particular site and they're referring to me as like a cult leader. So yeah, that was the latest we did. And so what does that say about all of the hundreds of thousands of sportsmen in this state that agree with us? These people that support the Saturday make it sound like that they're blindly following me, or they have no opinion or no analytic process to determine for themselves that they like the Monday. I'm a cult leader. Okay. So this is the kind of stuff that we're up against here with this opener situation. Staying with the censorship aspect, Representative Dave Maloney, who is very much a straight shooter and is involved in looking into a lot of these problems, what we have known and seen coming out of the agency. Not saying they do everything wrong. I'm not down that road, but there are things that, they're not in an ivory tower. They can make mistakes too. And there's an article. There you go, Dan. There's the picture. And what that picture is showing you, the Pennsylvania Game Commission sent over 30 people to the National Wild Turkey Federation at a cost of somewhere around $60,000 to $70,000 in that range. And that now is another one of these questionable moments. And when it was put in the Outdoor News, that was not front page copy. It was buried 3, 4, 5 pages into the paper. So once again, anything that sheds any doubt on agency decision making and so forth is being suppressed as much as possible without, I just mentioned a few of them here. So, as we talk about, the different issues and we talk about different things that have happened, what we're trying to do, not as much to beat up the agency as a whole. There is a problem, obviously, but how decision making that continually seems to be awry can also be part of what went awry regarding the Monday opener. And the PowerPoint that I just did here shortly, was a month or so ago, was circulated to legislators. It was circulated to a lot of individuals. I spoke with a gentleman, very nice individual, Derek Eberly, the head of the Governor's Council, who has since read the PowerPoint and circulated it and forwarded it to the council to bring some more attention to the details that led up to this. So somehow the people making this as this is me and Dan Davila, and we have no facts and we have no data. It's complete baloney. And I got a little fired up the other day with Derek on the phone too. He was not with him, but there was the topic we were discussing, Commissioner Geiger, and she's up for reappointment. I was kind to explain some of these things, and I got a little upset at one point. I might have lost my cool for a second even, but now she's taken a lead on the commissioners no longer being involved in the doe allocation process, which historically each district's commissioner had input on whether they felt their deer hunting numbers were good, bad, indifferent, whatever you want to say. Well, now the commissioners are backing away. They're going to allow nothing but the biologists to make these calls. And if you hadn't heard, this upcoming year, they're increasing doe allocations statewide, 147,000 more doe permits. Yeah, you heard it right, 147,000 coming off of a season of a high harvest last year. So, why do we have commissioners that, if they don't have input, why do we want their opinion on anything? Pine marten reintroduction, you name it. If we're going to follow the science, which they say they did, and what upset me with Mr. Eberly was, I told him that back when the Saturday opener was being proposed, the science at that time supported staying with the Monday. Public comment, hunter surveys, everything, and they didn't follow the science there because it didn't fit their opinion. Yeah, there's the increase in the doe allocations in all of these different management units, and again, totaling, I think it was 147,000. So, there's a lot here going on that shows some decision making that's highly questionable. And there's more. There's more. But, Dan and I talk over different issues at times, that things that happen, eliminating fall rifles 2 years ago for turkeys was not justified. They said they were going to eliminate the fall rifles and not have to reduce the season lengths. They went back and reduced the season lengths in roughly half of the management units after they had eliminated the rifles, which they said they were not going to have to do. Population numbers of turkeys were not that low, any lower than they had been in previous years. And boom, all of a sudden we have to take away all the opportunity for the guys that like to hunt fall birds with a rifle inappropriately. And Commissioner Daley was even on our third podcast, and he referred to that as the big lie, that we had to do that. So this trend or this pattern keeps continuing of decision making that is certainly open for discussion.
Well, it also comes to bear in my mind anyway, the job that Brian Burhan's is doing, and the influence that Dan Lachlan had with him, just on this one topic alone. There seems to be an agenda there, and a management style that is not looking at the big picture. They're looking at like putting Band-Aids on things, and really, to be honest with you, I'd like to hear what a five-year plan is. Is there one? Does one exist? Are we strictly looking at the numbers? And if we're looking at the numbers, how is that even right when the numbers are estimated with the relation to the deer kill? And then you have the issue of the elk program, which hats off to them. It's been good. maybe too good. Maybe what we're facing here, Randy, especially in that northern tier, and you know which counties I'm talking about, where the elk deal is more has first priority over the deer management program, and I'm not sure that that's right, because the number one moneymaker for licenses is what, deer season. More people in the woods, more ammo sold, more everything sold. It has the biggest impact economically is deer season. So and then there's the pheasant program, the stocking program, all these things that you and I talked about that had a lot to do with license sales and so on and so forth.
Funny you'd bring that up. Had a young man stop at my shop. It was a friend of my son's, and he was upset about the pheasant having to purchase a pheasant permit to hunt pheasant. And he hasn't purchased one since they went to this. And he brought something to light that I hadn't thought about previously. But, back in the day when you bought your hunting license, you could hunt pheasant. You could take a pheasant. So I was a rabbit hunter. I have beagles. I still do. A lot of us would small game hunt, maybe didn't even have dogs. We'd go out for small game. And there was that moment when a big old rooster would go up and you'd get one, and you would be, boy, what an exciting moment for you that day, even if you weren't hunting for them. Well, when they went to this pheasant permit, what that did, and you think about this for a minute, they always talk about expanding opportunity. Well, now we have 20 or 25,000 hunters that buy the pheasant permit. Okay. That means where we previously had every hunter in the state of Pennsylvania had the opportunity to shoot a pheasant, cockbird or hen if you're above certain areas, that number of hunters, whether it was 750, 800, 850, and on, that total hunters that, whether they small game hunted, whatever proportion of those did, is now been reduced to that 25,000 who buy the permit. So the opportunity for the average Joe who's out small game hunting, he jumps a ringneck, he can't shoot it anymore unless he has a $27 or $29, whatever it is, pheasant permit. So how is that increasing opportunity? Now, that has brought in $600 to $700,000 to the agency. I get that. But we also have to be very cognizant that the agency currently in the game fund has a lucrative situation with the total game fund. I think now is $270 million. I think there was roughly 60% from Game Land Resources, so forth. So the money's there to fund the pheasant program, without the need for these tags, to open this back up to every hunter of the state. But we spend 60 or 70,000 to send 30 people to the National Wild Turkey Federation. Decisions like that, buying shirts for them. And I also, this right to know that was filed for this, I got some information through some different people that this was shared from the representative, that the individuals that went down there had different events that they put in for reimbursement for as they would sign up. One was brought to my attention that several of these people that were sent from the agency signed up for reimbursement for their joining a pub crawl. Yes, I said that, a pub crawl. So here's a group of 30-some people. There's a lot of question marks here now of the appropriateness of this money spent, who was sent, who should have, marketing people, IT people, whatever. But how in the world can you be sent to something from your employer and actually have the gall to sign up for a pub crawl and request reimbursement for that? Bad enough you did it. You think you'd eat that, to not put that out in public venue. But this type of stuff, how much of this, now that's only a few people out of that group. Maybe it was 6, 7, I don't know. That's what I was told. But how is that appropriate? Is that not an indicator of problems, of things that are going on? And of course, these decisions, some of the ones that we just brought up, do they fold right in with the change of the opening day situation? And I believe absolutely, when you watch my podcast and the data that's been put together, unquestionably it does.
Well, to go along with that, Maloney certainly recognizes that as hence when Brian had to testify in front of the Senate Game and Fisheries, and he was called to task on a number of issues by Maloney. So for all the people that think that this is dead, it's far from dead. What has taken place now is Pennsylvania Game Commission has turned a blind eye to our coalition, to Randy and myself, and so we had no choice but to take it to legislators. And of course, you have heard that backstory by Lachlan himself. Are you sure you want legislation involved in this? Well, we already had them involved in it with him, and that's a guy that doesn't miss any chance for a photo op. I mean, this guy is introducing all kinds of bills. It's common knowledge that he has aspirations to run for governor, and there he is with bilateral social media posts with him and the governor on some piece of legislation. So for all those people that think that we're not getting anything done over the last couple of months, just know that Muscola and Smith, we already have one bill done, and we've been in touch with him like once a week, so we kind of know where things are at. Somebody says, hey, do you think this is going to change? Put it this way: if this becomes a law, then we basically they have to honor that. That'll be dictated down to them, not where they have an opportunity to try to pull another fast one on us, like, well, let's agree to do another survey. No, survey's been done. We've done numerous surveys after that. Monday supporters came out on top on 90% of the surveys that were done. Go ahead, Randy.
Yeah, you're right, Dan, and that we've seen a lot of spot surveys throughout the state, including the one from Senate Game and Fisheries, which had 10,500 participants come back in favor of the Monday. We've seen that over and over and over and over. And, when I was speaking with the head of the Governor's Council, Mr. Eberly, and like I said, we had a nice conversation twice. We were probably on the phone for an hour the first time and damn near that the second time. But I had found something was brought to my attention because there's been a lot of questioning regarding the commissioner selection procedure in Pennsylvania. I went through it. There's a lot of concern that the hunter input just is not there. And I had brought to my attention that the state of Kentucky has a process by which they use, and it was very unique. And I had read it, and I started to share it with Mr. Eberly, and he was very interested in it. And I sent him the link. And again, in the interest of hopefully improving things for our hunters of Pennsylvania. But in Kentucky, when their commissioner is coming to the end of his tenure, they have, I think it's a 30-day period, or prior to 30 days, they can pick individuals from within their district, 4 or 5 of them, perhaps more, but I think it's stated 4 or 5, that they would consider qualified to fill their shoes when they left that position in that district. Then there's a public meeting held. The sportsmen get to basically vote and select 4 or 5 of these particular candidates to be put forth in front of the governor for consideration. So there's a direct link to the candidates that are going in front of the governor and the sportsman input of that district. We don't have that here in Pennsylvania. And I just thought it was a very interesting aspect. And then, of course, it still gets voted on by the Senate in Kentucky and so forth. But it was an interesting procedure that Mr. Eberly asked me if I'd put forth some bullet points about this. So I said, hell, I'll just send you the link. And he was able to read that himself. So, although we do bring out, we're in a process now because we're upset of some of these problems that have happened in recent years. We also want to try to interject things that perhaps could help the situation, like this potential overhaul, if you will, of our commissioner selection process. Mr. Eberly and I, in our discussions, he has to go every 4 years and re-up these commissioners. And my question was to him, and I don't think he had an answer, was what's the criteria of after 4 years, per se now with Commissioner Geiger being the next one to be considered for the next 4 years, what's the evaluation criteria of her performance based on, and the fact when they do these reevaluations, no other individuals are interviewed. In other words, it's not like Commissioner Geiger at her 4th year, or any commissioner has 3 or 4 other candidates that they're up against, per se, with some honest democratic competition. They are the only one that is kept there for reconsideration for their 2nd term or potentially their 3rd term of, leading into 12 years. So there's a lot of interesting things here, I think, that may help transparency within the agency, bring more hunter involvement and input to the commissioner process. But what are we doing now? We're doing just the opposite. We're pulling commissioners out of the doe allocation process. We're going the other way. So these are some of the things that Dan and I talk about that we want to bring to the attention of our sportsmen in Pennsylvania to know that we're not about tearing down the agency as much as our concerns being of what the recent, Dan likes to refer to it, I think, Dan, is the culture. And that's something I think we need to take a step back and look. Our numbers are dropping, and this opener had made not one bit of difference. The change, I think, what were the numbers? We lost 40-some thousand licenses in the last 2 years. I think it was from 2020. I have that number in the PowerPoint. So if we gained 1,000 or something in one category, that can't even be tied to the Saturday opener change. The flip side of that is we're bleeding hunters from the adult resident category, and even the junior category slowed down a little, but they're still declining.
Well, to go along with that, Pennsylvania is bleeding residents. Between 2021 and 2022, 21,000 less residents. So people literally moved out of the state. But Pennsylvania's got some unique issues to deal with economically. 2nd highest gas tax in the country. There's a lot going on, and a lot of it that's not good.
Dan and I want to help this governor. I mean, he came on scene saying, I want to, in his words, reignite Pennsylvania's economy. And anyone that knows this change from this Monday opener to the Saturday knows how it affected small town Pennsylvania and the rural communities of economically, of all the fundraisers and things that we still talk about, that this was not needed. And this certainly was not something to reignite. This was something that went the opposite direction. Small Business Friday, Small Business Saturday, Black Friday, Small Business Saturday were that weekend that we put our hunters in the woods. So, I think there's a lot to be considered in a game commission decision, not just the science. There's social, there's economic, and I think they've strayed from that tremendously with too much opinion from board members on some issues and too little concern of how the social economic factors would be affected, like what's happened with the opener change. And
right. And to go along with that, they flip-flopped on this original issue. When Jim Daly brought this thing, they already had the staff do reports, and it was overwhelmingly agreed upon by the own Pennsylvania Game Commission staff that this was not going to be supported by the hunters. Then 2 years later, they come up with a different scenario that said that we were going to make the change and that it was supported, and they keep holding it and throwing it in our face that their survey supported the Saturday support. And just I have no words to describe the disdain I have for their arrogance of them, to where they, at this point, and I watched when you were up there talking, Randy, not one person was listening. They didn't look at you. There was no eye contact. I'm sure they did the same thing with me. We're kind of like the anti-hunters, and that couldn't be farther from the truth.
In fact, one of the testifiers on the April meeting, you probably remember, Dan, as he walked away, he pointed at the commissioner, said, "Look at them. They're not even listening." It wasn't us. It was just another testifier. So there's something to be said about attentiveness, eye contact with an individual that's speaking to you. There's a certain courtesy there. Things that tend to now be more of a condescending nature in that. And I said this many years ago. I said, me testifying here today, which would have been the day of their making their decisions on certain things, whether it was me or anybody, my point being, if my testimony here today changes any minds of any commissioners, shame on you, because you didn't do your homework. You should have your positions developed before the 11th hour. So this public testimony, in my opinion, is window dressing, and the fact that it's censored out, unlike the Fish and Boat Commission that allows it to be kept in their transcripts that are put on YouTube, that says something. And some of these legislators now are stepping forward to have concerns about this culture and the decision making and the things that are going on within this agency. And they're the richest wildlife agency in North America, because of the game land revenues with the Sportsman, basically provided most of those game lands, hunters and trapper dollars. It's probably in the 90%.
Questions I have for you, Randy. Do they have somebody on staff that's has wealth management credentials? Can you answer that question?
I think I'd like to answer that question with advising everybody to go back a few years on YouTube and search the audit results, the presser that was done by then time Auditor General Eugene DePasquale with Representative Maloney. Here's our guy that's right there trying to make things better. And listen to that presser of what happened after that audit was done. I think one of the comments was it was the most recommendations ever issued from their office to a state agency. There were multiple things that were concerning. And to go to what your point was, Dan, sure doesn't look like it. I mean, there was CFOs that weren't even aware of some of these, what were they called, funds that they had in, these, I'm trying to think of the word right now. But I would say for anybody that questions, not so much, no, they weren't royalties. It was the, they had funds established. But there were some that had $1 million in them and lesser, and so that he wasn't even aware of. So don't listen to me on this. Go watch that press release that was done by the state's Auditor General. And it was 4 years back, maybe. I don't know. You can search it on YouTube. And it was Eugene DePasquale at that time, and listen to it. And I think that goes a long way to showing that there is other problems that within the agency that maybe parallel the game management decisions and problems. But these are the sorts of things we got to get fixed. We want this agency. It'd be wonderful if they could stay autonomous and not get rolled into, DCNR or the Fish and Game combined and those sorts of things. We don't want that. But I think there's things that need fixed, as do many people. So, but
right. Well, that's a good point, Randy. And to go along with that, just a little caveat out to our supporters, people that may not support us but are certainly listening to us. We thank you for the opportunity, and we thank for the support and the people that showed up, that put their own gas in, paid almost $3.70 a gallon to drive to Harrisburg and to not be recorded and to watch the show, so to speak, go on. We thank you for that. We thank you for the emails, and some of you have been sending us some money. Thanks to Jack Marks. Thank you, Jack, to help us continue to move this along. But be that as it may, funds or no funds, we're moving forward with this thing. We're not gonna back off of it. We see enough things being done wrong that we feel that we have to jump in and make sure that it's public knowledge. And that's all we're doing, providing this information to the public. Stuff that you're not going to hear from them or from the outdoor news, but you're going to hear it from us. So we are going to ask the questions. Say it again.
Fellow cult leader.
Yeah. Yeah. So we will get a hold of Travis Lau and put a right to know in. We would like to know who the other high level official was that was hunting with Lachlan. That's going to take place, and I just, not that it means anything other than the fact I would like to know. I mean, we have not a good feeling about the way they rolled this out, and the cast of characters is suspect. It really is.
When this story was told to me from the officer that cited the senator, that he identified that this was an upper official, and he also mentioned to me that the Pennsylvania Game Commission reached back to this officer to find out what happened. And what he basically said to me is they had concerns, and when they found out that their people, the way he worded it, and whether it was one or two, I don't know, weren't not cited, they seemed satisfied. So the agency was aware of this incident with the senator. So you can't claim ignorance. It's kind of interesting that it was kept under wraps until I testified here, in April, and then now it's being brought out, by the senator. Oh, it's just an oversight. Oh, I just didn't know what license to get, but the caveat of the hunt being timely after the first Saturday opener, which he lobbied for at the agency, and being with officials from the agency, being at that time chairman of Game and Fisheries, which is really oversight of the Game Commission. So, this is something that's, of course, it's interesting to say that it doesn't look good. No, on appearance alone. And now here we are 4 years in on a decision that is still seriously divided our sportsmen, hurt the Commonwealth economy and things so it makes this inappropriateness, if you will, of this, let's call it the high five hunting trip, even more hurting to us as sportsmen. And what hunting dollars to us are very important in this state. It's a lot of what a lot of legislators hang their hat on to support hunting, because we drive $1.6 billion revenue source for the state. So economic aspects tied to hunting are very important. So we have to look at that picture, and that's the one that was, I think, and Dan and I know, it was lost in this whole
Sunday,
melange.
Sunday deal. This was all based upon the Sunday deal, and no juncture was.
And we're not pro. And let's state it again, Dan. We're not pro or con Sunday hunting. I mean, I had testified years back. I was in a different position with some support for Sunday hunting. Today, I'm neutral, because it's still a controversial topic.
Even amongst our followers.
Yeah.
Even amongst our followers, we have people that say, I don't like the Sunday thing. We're not here to talk about Sunday. We're here to restore the Monday opener.
And I'll leave you with this to, we can button this thing up. I had a guy call me, a friend of mine, 2 days ago. We were talking. He had someone come up to him, and the opener came up. And again, it seems to come up all the time. And the guy said, we have 19 people that hunt in our family, in our group. He said, 18 of the 19 do not like the Saturday opener. This was 2 days ago. And this is just what keeps coming and coming and coming. So again, do we get to a point, where this legislation is moving forward, or do we get to the point, Dan, that you had talked about several months ago? Do we do a statewide poll of hunters to show where this thing washes out? And I've said this before, if it comes out 51-49, either way, that does not preclude the impacts that are tied to it with economics, with family time, with fundraising events, and so forth. So those peripheral issues still have to carry weight in that decision, which were given zero weight in 2019. So at any rate, I don't know if you have anything, Dan, you'd like to finish with, or
Nope, that's it. Just everybody. We got a couple gals that have come to the forefront of our coalition. I wanted to mention her names. I don't have Jennifer's last name.
Jennifer Guerrero
And Rebecca
Latini.
Okay,
Right.
Just everybody keep your eyes and ears open. These gals are going to have something to say on behalf of our coalition. And Jennifer testified that she did a wonderful job. And to make it a point about how good a job she did, didn't Geiger come down off the stage and right in front of Randy and I, like pretty much just passed the and gave her a challenge coin for the.
Here's what that was. A finger in our eye. That's what that was. Yeah. Here's a finger in your eye, Randy. So we get it, Kirsten.
We don't care who.
It's not a game.
Takes response. This isn't a game.
This isn't a game.
Livelihoods. This is about livelihoods.
People's lives.
This isn't about us shooting a deer on Saturday or shooting a deer on Monday. This is about fixing something that they made a mistake, and they need to own on to it. They need to own up, and that's it. That's where this thing is. We always felt that at the end of the day, the economics of this poor decision would carry the day, and we hear that time and time again when we're speaking to legislators. That yes, it did have an effect.
Well, and again, thank everyone. This thing is getting rekindled as we speak through Facebook group, through our coalition. Of course, might as well say them real quick. The coalition is Hunters against the Monday deer, or against the Saturday deer opener. I'm sorry. Our let me get this straight now. The Facebook group is Pennsylvania Hunters against the Saturday opener, if you care to get involved there. And the coalition is Pennsylvania Hunters that want to reinstate the Monday opener. And you get involved there just by sending an email, rsantucci2022 at gmail.com. And yours is what? ddavilla2112 at gmail.com. So if you send an email to either one of them, doesn't cost you a penny, but it gets you in the coalition, which we keep in contact through a constant contact program and keep people involved in the as this moves forward. So thank you, everyone. And Dan, have a good one here. And we're going to try to make sure we don't end up 2 and 3 months out between the next podcast. It was a crazy couple months for us. So thanks again. Take care.
Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.